Oh, why are you wearing a headpiece? Why?
Staff?
I'm aware of that.
I am too, and I refuse to wear one.
Well, this is after I already had the squib removed from my ear
There we go.
by medics.
Oh God.
God, you know, why do you do this?
I think I already covered that insanity.
Yeah, I know.
Who's gonna start doing it? Yeah, do that. And yeah, we do that. So everybody who's here, small group, but hopefully it'll be informative. Welcome to learn why we talk about the press and how we talk about the press and the media and all that crap.
It's true.
Not the official title of the panel, but that's really what it is.
We decided to need a better name.
Yeah. So actually, I was going to start with Cody kind of giving a little bit of history on why this panel might be necessary.
Sure.
And it all comes back to MFF 2002 or 2001.
No, it's 2000.
Was it 2000?
It was
So it was a while back. Vanity Fair decided to write an article about the furry fandom using Midwest Fur Fest as the example, as the host convention. A lot of people didn't really know what was going to come of it. And what ended up happening was it ended up being an article about a lot of people who were into very different things that came to Midwest Fur Fest. A lot of them very unsavory, very unpalatable, and it kind of gave the entire furry fandom a black eye for a long time. And immediately following that, a couple years later, was CSI.
Yeah.
The CSI episode.
1-2 punch.
Yeah, it wasn't 1-2 punch.
It was a really bad episode, though. Like,
It
it wasn't
was.
even good.
Yeah.
Fursuits weren't even fursuits. They were like commercial mascot things. So very, very, very not us.
The story was bad, the acting was bad,
Yeah.
it was bad.
You can always tell when they don't have a clue about fur because they rent a couple of suits from some rental house and
Right,
that
yeah.
to them is fur.
But the thing is, that article and that television show, even though the television show was a work of fiction, the article and the television show set the tone for the furry fandom for the next 7 to 8 years.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
You know, it took a while, like certain conventions actually adjusted their code of conduct. And they changed the way they do things and how they classify things because of those two interactions. And it was a time when, like, I live in Orlando, the people that work at Disney at that time were very closeted. Disney did not want that kind of an image associated with their employees, and they would fire people for some of the things that they could be accused of outside of the workplace. So the local convention had to kind of adapt and not even use the word furry. We had to use the word funny animal for 2 years to try to make sure that our staff members and our board members that worked at Disney were protected. But we didn't want to go explaining that to the public because then that would get in the media and create a whole new problem. So we stayed very quiet about it, and it created a lot of backlash against the convention. So there are a lot of reasons why conventions do the things they do and implement the policies that they do towards the media and the press. And I think it's fair to say, and Cody, I hope would agree, every interaction with the media is a learning experience because they're all different. And every interaction is both an opportunity and a chance to really make mistakes. Depends on what you do and how you do it.
So, well, I mean, at the most basic level, people who write stories, anybody who writes stories, whether you're talking fiction, whether you're talking something that goes in a newspaper, there's an agenda behind it. The agenda doesn't have to be nefarious. Some of the agendas may be, I am a writer and want people to see my work. Some of the agendas are, I am trying to promote an advertiser who's paid me specific money to go and promote my specific product. The challenge, you see this actually in a lot of the corporate world, if you're not familiar with it, big corporations spend an awful lot of time dealing with management of image, management of how the market perceives what they're doing. I mean, bluntly for the easiest reason, which means if you like my brand, I don't have to spend a whole lot of money selling it to you. So when you break my brand, me selling my stuff to you becomes a very expensive proposition. And I'm getting into this because the convention is actually very, very similar. We're not selling a product, but there is effectively a brand that you're representing to the community, and how that brand is viewed helps the convention or it doesn't help the convention. But on the other side, because there's an emotional connection typically between a lot of the attendees and a lot of the people who run this to furry and to things. We use this to express ourselves, we use this to learn, it's a part of our social settings. Some of this stuff is pretty important to not be represented in the wrong way. And we spent a lot of time, at least for the MFF perspective, making sure that whenever the media is involved, we're giving a fair representation of what we believe our community is comprised of. And I think that's the challenge when you look at a lot of these modern incidents. There aren't too many really major incidents today, and I guess the other thing is media is so saturated anyway, it's really hard to go find certain things. But we want to make sure that, like, when CNN, for example, decides to go into a program and then they start delving into things like, well, so I want to talk about your sexuality.
Yeah.
I understand that. It's salacious. You're out there to go sell some stuff. I need you to understand that that is a part of our community. We don't believe an entire segment is a fair representation of what we do. We're not going to say sex doesn't happen. I mean, as you said plainly, I go to Vegas for work all the time. I know my coworkers are having sex in the hotel room. You're not going to go put that on CNN. It's boring. And that's the same reason I feel very uncomfortable about how a lot of these other media outlets tend to want to at least initially approach. And I don't want to paint them all that way. A lot of them do, but not all of them anymore.
I think it depends on marketing region. Because
It does, yeah.
You know, like CNN is a national news organization, an international news organization, whereas a local newspaper has a much more finite market.
Yep.
So their perspectives and their interest levels are going to vary depending on what they're trying to do. But the other thing is, as a person who studied journalism for a couple of years in college before I changed majors, it was my major for a while. A lot of journalists do come in with very specific agendas, but also they come in from a specific viewpoint. And I keep using that word because it's important.
Yeah.
There are some people that are feature writers and some people that are news writers, and they have very different reasons why they're going after a story. And I'll give you an example, and this has nothing to do with furry, but when I was studying, I did what was called the hobby beat in Houston. And we covered model trains, stamp collecting, coin collecting, sci-fi shows. Covered all kinds of stuff. When I did the article about stamp collecting, I went downtown. There's a little shop where they sell all the newest releases. They call it the Postique. Got information on all of the different stamps that were going to be released over the next 3 weeks. Wrote it all up, get background on the people that were on the stamps, did a genuine news story on this piece. Got an F on it because it was boring. And they said, well, why didn't you focus on the Postique? That's a really cool little location. And my answer was, that's not news. For anybody in the stamp collecting community, they know that it's there. For people that go to the downtown post office, they know that it's there. Why would I write a news story on that? I would write a feature story on that. But for news story, no. And her response was, you don't understand modern journalism. And that's when I stopped being, that was the comment that made me stop being a journalism major, because I didn't believe it. It wasn't my thing. I wanted to write about news, not feature stories. A lot of news reporters now are looking for feature stories, and that's the personal side of things, it's the colorful side of things. It's not the drab, dry, this is the information you need, give it to you in 5 to 15 seconds and move on. They want to focus on something different, a very small angle for 30 to 40 minutes, and get whatever they can out of it that will draw in readers. That's what a lot of newscasters that do national news stories try to do these days. They're not interested in a quick story. They want to dig deeper, find something they can anchor onto, and spin the story from there. That is not necessarily the person we always want to talk to. We can go talk to them, but we have to let them know we are going to represent all of our attendees, and we are going to represent the one convention that they are there to see, not all conventions.
Yes.
To use a very colorful term, it pisses off other conventions when you try to represent them as another convention. Because it's not necessarily talking about them.
No, and agreed. It's not fair, I think, ultimately, because so many people, these conventions, I keep harping on this, it is a lot of work for a lot of people to make any convention work, and it is such an emotional labor for so many people. When you effectively try to tell somebody, no, this is why you did that, which is what you're doing when you're speaking for somebody else's con, it really gets people upset.
Yes.
I didn't give hundreds of hours for what you just said I did that for. That doesn't really validate the work. You've actually cheapened what I've contributed in my view to the convention. I think there's a lot of that. And the challenge, though, I think, is as we grow as a community, what is furry? I mean, ultimately, and that could be probably a panel unto itself, but how then do you fairly represent it? How do you fairly represent a single convention at some point? Because there are so many different facets.
I think when it comes to each individual convention, every convention has a mission statement. And every convention adheres to a specific code of conduct. those two things really identify what the con wants to do
Yep.
and how we're going to do it. And again, a convention in Florida, a convention in Pittsburgh are going to act very differently than a convention in Chicago because
Yeah.
our demographics are different.
Yep.
The way we live are completely different.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, the communities and the kinds of businesses that are around are different. The things we interact with are different. And it is very unfair. And I'm going to pick on Anthrocon because I'm on the AC board of directors. So I feel comfortable making a couple of statements, but I'm not going to like talk for the whole con. But I think from AC's point of view, being in the community, being in the city is just as important to that con as being at the con.
Yep.
Pulling you out and
Fair.
seeing how Pittsburgh reacts to attendees is very important to them. That is not necessarily important to Megaplex, though, in Florida, that the community, that we go out and do as much outreach to the community. Certain parts of it are, but it's not to the level that AC does. Midwest Fur Fest has a different relationship with its host city, and it's not, it's fair to compare the two against one another and say, oh, I want to do this, therefore I'm going to go there, because that's a choice of yours. But it's not fair to say, this is better than this, because I like this better than this. It's not inherently better.
I agree. No, it's that same argument you get at the office. I like chocolate glazed donuts and you like crullers. Oh, well, no, you're wrong. It's like, well, that art is not good art. Well, it's art. How the heck, what? No. So, I don't know. The fact that they're different, I think that's actually a really good point. I don't know. You could do a story just on that. The fact that furry in itself isn't just one big thing. I think it keeps things more interesting. I don't want to go to the same con 20 times a year or even twice a year. I like that there's a different feel to that kind of stuff. And that is the huge challenge whenever you're talking to the media about the fandoms. You really run the risk of painting a brush across everybody, because if you're not a part of this and you don't understand how complex these interrelations are in the community, they're going to pick out what's going to work when you pop it in 50-point font and make it bold on a news page. I mean, that's what they want. A person does blah, 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 blah. Wow, that's weird. I want to read that. And then look at the ads that they get paid for me to see. So, again, I'm not painting all media the same way, because there actually are a number of journalists out there who genuinely, and they are, and that's actually a very good point. At least from our perspective within Midwest Fur Fest, we do an awful lot of work to actually research if somebody's doing photojournalism, if they're doing print journalism. I need to see what you've done. Can you just give me some examples of the work that you've done and help me understand what you're looking to accomplish based on this? Now, you can get really savvy people who would just know to say the right things and then do awful things behind your back. And there's always sort of a judgment call that happens as a result of that.
That really does happen every
does.
once in a while. It does. It gets through the cracks, and we end up with egg on our face at some point. But you know what? There are also the flip side, the myriad of genuine journalists who are there for the 15-second blurb on the news to say, this is what's going on in my community. This is what's going on in your city. If you're interested, here's where it is. This is the rate, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then they just move on to the next story. But in working with the stuff, because I actually do this for Pittsburgh year-round with Anthrocon, and I've started working on more stuff with Megaplex, more stuff with TFF, Texas Furry Fiesta is another con I'm doing media work for. A lot of it, most people don't know how much legwork and how much research and pre-work goes into a very short media clip.
Yep.
How many people saw TFF's Rooster Teeth interview this summer? One person. So they are a huge, and I didn't know this, they are a huge video gaming market blog. They're one of the biggest in the world. I did not know that.
Massive.
And so as I'm walking around interviewing them, and I talked with them at a table about 30 minutes before anything got filmed, and I just said, I'm going to give you carte blanche, ask me questions right now before we start the interview process. What do you want to know? And they're like, well, we hear there's a lot of adult stuff. And I was like, that you will find adult stuff in the same way if you go to Barnes & Noble and you go and look, there's the Kama Sutra. If you go to Amazon and you search for some adult products, they're there. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the focus of Amazon and that's the focus of Barnes & Noble. If you're looking for something, you're probably going to find it. If you want the truth and you just want to know what all these people are about, let's go talk to the people and let them tell you themselves what this is all about. Let me give you my description of the fandom, and you judge me for that. Let me walk you around the con space. And they were very comfortable with that answer because we weren't trying to hide anything. We weren't trying to say, no, don't look at this, look at this. But they did know we were going to take them in certain areas where they were going to get, I don't like the word the naked truth, But they were going to see the convention in its own form in ConSpace. And once we allowed them to see that, they were much more comfortable asking questions. I let Gus put one of my fursuit heads on, and his immediate response was, "Oh my God, this is getting so hot. Oh my God, I can barely breathe." And he took it off. He was like, "How the hell do you do that?" And I'm like, "You do it because you enjoy the activity. You enjoy costuming.
And you get used to it.
And you do acclimate." And the funniest part was, I was like, "Here's the bodysuit right now. Here's the tail. Here's the hole that the tail goes through." And he goes, "There's a hole in the back of the suit?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Why would you put a hole in the back of your costume?"
Uh-oh.
And I said, "You know what? There's one answer. Maintenance. It's much easier to take that tail off, clean it, throw the bodysuit in the washer than have this big attached thing with polyfill clumping up and have it bent and not look right. This suit is 5 years old. It looks almost brand new." And he was like, "That makes a lot of sense." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's nothing heinous or evil about it. It's really just, it makes it easier to clean." And he looked at it, and he looked at the belt loop and everything, and he's like, "You guys are ingenious. I never would have thought of detaching the tail from the costume." Once you get past the initial shock or the initial, "Why do you do this?"
I just looked at him like, "What did you think it was?"
But once you get past that and the leading question, things were very easy. And when we gave him that honest answer, he had an honest response, and it worked. And that's why the interview went as well as it did.
His head said so
Yeah.
much.
The other thing is, Cody can attest to this, I think, with the CNN part. But when
that was awesome.
when I do pre-work with journalists because I've talked to CNN before, I've talked to NBC, I've talked to the Wall Street Journal, a bunch of periodicals about this thing. When you set up expectations and you set up definitions and you explain things ahead of time, a lot of the times they will use your words when they're doing the piece. There was a thing that I did for Megaplex where we were on a show called Good Day Orlando. It's basically Good Morning America, but just for Orlando. And I did this 35 to 45 minute pre-interview with the host. When he got there, he used my exact words from the phone to describe half of the activities. I told him, anthropomorphics is really a $5 word for walking, talking cartoon animals. During the piece, he said, "We're here at the Megaplex convention, the furry convention. You might be wondering what this is. This is an anthropomorphics convention. That's really a $5 word for walking, talking animals." And it was like, "You owe me royalties for that. Those are my words." But like I said, we gave him words that he understood. We put it in simple terms, easy definitions that were easily relatable to people. We didn't use anthropomorphics, lots of big words, and try to razzle-dazzle them. We're just like, cartoon animals, walking, talking animals. Use terms that people understand, and it eliminates the confusion. And when it comes to talking with the press, when they relate that, you have just sent that word out, those messages out to hundreds of thousands of people that are watching that. And you've immediately put down a definition that they can understand. So it's not a mystery anymore. It's like, oh, well, these people over here they like anime. Well, what's anime? They like Japanese animation characters. Oh, okay, so it's Japanese cartoons. These people like anthropomorphic. Well, what's that? Well, they're individuals that have their digigrade or plantigrade legs, and they can be vulpines. No, they're walking, talking cartoon animals. People get that. They move on. Once the confusion is gone, the
fear is gone.
The fear, but also the confusion goes away. And then people can start relating. And I think Cody would do the same thing when he's doing his pre-interviews. It's like,
"Oh, I'm not very nice," but well, no, because so I spent a lot of time doing a lot of corporate media stuff for a tech company. It's not too hard to understand what they're trying to do. There's an agenda behind something. I keep using the word agenda. There's something they're trying to do with whatever the piece is. And typically during the pre-review, I'm trying to understand, what are you doing with this? And so a lot of times it's just examples of your work. Tell me about your angles on this. What are you interested in? And if they start to go down one rat hole, you start to ask, okay, why is this of interest to you? I don't know if I want to call out, well, do I want to call it CNN? Yeah, I will call it CNN. It's common knowledge. Okay, so Lisa Ling from CNN had reached out to us to want to do a story on Midwest Fur Fest, and I spent like 2 hours on the phone with her producer producer.
And that was for this year.
It was actually, yeah. It was supposed to be for this year. And I was peppering her with a lot of questions. I actually have a lot of respect for Lisa Ling as a journalist. She was a PBS journalist. She was one of the people captured in North Korea at one point. She wrote a bunch of documentaries about this stuff. She now does an offshoot show on CNN, and it's a little risque, but was willing to entertain the conversation because it was specifically about the convention. I spent a whole bunch of time talking, built out specific points, figured out what she's trying to do, and it was one of those, okay, how are we going to fairly represent the convention and the attendees? And then what do we do to back that up? And so it became a conversation of what do you need? She said this, and this. Okay, well, let me see if I can go get a few people lined up because ultimately we're about this, and this. We were set to do an interview here on site with a few of the folks, and then lo and behold, the producer, much to my chagrin, went behind our backs and started going to pretty much every con. And then the conversation came all about sexuality. And so when we had found out that this conversation where we had gotten, basically what it came down to, the note that I ended up sending back to her, was I was going to do this because our community in general does not trust the media. I trust you and I trust Lisa. You went behind my back and did a whole bunch of other things. I can't trust you. The importance of how our community is represented cannot be understated for our attendees. We don't care. We're not trying to grow the convention. We're not trying to go and make a story out there inside the world. The goal was you are a reputable journalist. You're genuinely interested in what this community is about. Here's what we feel is a fair cross-section. I was prepared to talk about the sex angle as a part of it under the auspices that it was not representative of the entire community. But the minute it came down to, oh, we're going to go and fish into all these other conventions and go down over here, I just said, you violated the trust. I can't have you on site because I don't trust you. I thought you had journalistic integrity. We had a very lengthy conversation about this stuff. You violated that. I can't have you on site. And I've told the hotel, I've told the convention center, you're not welcome. But I mean, I was stunned because I had such respect for this and because the conversation didn't even have remotely red flags. What I suspect happened is she was trying to sell the story to the network. So that this in particular was a production company. Most large news agencies or companies that broadcast larger things, ABC, CBS, CNN, they don't actually do the content. It's a production company that sells their work to CNN, and CNN broadcasts it for them. So her production company has to sell the concept to say, CNN, we're going to go do this, will you buy my story? And I suspect what happened is CNN's like, well, can you be a bit more salacious than that? Because we aren't going to get the viewership. And so it probably twisted. But at the end of the day, that's her business, not my business. And in the case of this, you violated what we had agreed on. You violated the trust of this. I can't have you on site, not even remotely.
And I think piggybacking on that, with the other conventions that production company and Lisa had gone to and whatnot, there was another angle or another component within the fandom. There were a lot of individuals who were questioning why that other convention did not advertise in advance that CNN was going to be there.
That's right.
That this production company was going to be there. And you can probably guess what the things are. It's like, I don't want my fursuit being shown on this show. I do not want anybody from my home or my business or my company seeing my face on here. It is the convention's responsibility to let us know in advance. My response has been, no, it's not. And actually, it would have been irresponsible for a convention to do that. And here's why. When you tell publicly, you state that a major news outlet is going to be filming at your location, you have just sent up an invitation to all sorts of individuals that you don't want to show up, to come out and protest outside, to harass your attendees, to try to sneak inside. You don't want people knowing ahead of time. And that's why I wish more people would have come to this panel if for that only reason, to know the con is looking out for you when they don't tell you these things, because they're trying to not become a magnet for the people you don't want here, the people you have already stated you are uncomfortable with being here because they cause problems. They're going to want to come here because they're going to think they get on television.
Yes.
You know, and so the con is being responsible, both MFF and any other convention that did not tell people in advance they were coming. They're being responsible and being protective of your safety and of your con experience.
And you can obviously attest from the Anthrocon side, we had almost 20 news agencies reach out to us for the MFF this year, and 2 got approved. And of those 2, Chiro, who's been helping us with media, has been glued to them like just stuck the whole time. One of them I'm a little nervous about because I see where he's going, but this isn't Chiro's first rodeo either. And he does like the tricks that you talk about all the time. If they start delving into the sex thing continually, you kind of pull it back on them and you're like, is there something you need to help me understand? Why are you so interested in sex? Is this a perverted piece? Do you have deviancy issues we need to better understand before we go further in this? And just make them feel super, super awkward and uncomfortable. There's no reason to fear these people. They're just people. A lot of these people, they may have a bit more experience, but they're just people. Make them feel awkward and they generally go away.
Yeah, and from the AC experience, because I've been dealing with the media there for so long, actually, Kage has kind of stepped aside, and I am actually the person that handles all media interviews for Anthrocon now. Kage doesn't do them much anymore. When you build up a rapport with a local group of newscasters, and the radio people actually are my favorites to deal with, not the TV people. I love the radio groups.
Yeah.
They start asking interesting questions and setting up interesting interviews. And my favorite one came from KDKA radio, where we dealt with the hosts the prior year. And when we did the interview, they said, hey, we actually have this bit that we do where we go live to the television station simultaneously on the morning show. Could a couple of you guys show up in fursuit and actually be in our radio spots in the studio and act like you're talking for us?
That's awesome. I remember
And this is on YouTube. It's out.
Really
It's
awesome.
out there, and it was called "Tigers Take Over KDKA," and
It's a great video.
it's a hilarious
I haven't
video.
seen it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's a
where
lot of fun.
Tycoon and myself are in tiger costumes, and we're acting out the words and whatnot, and then they say, "That's not Jim. That's not him." I'm like, "Why do you?" He goes, "What do you mean it's not?" And they said, because he's not wearing a Penguins jersey, that can't be him. And all of a sudden, that newscaster just sticks his head up in front of the camera, looks around, and pulls his head back. And everybody is losing it. But when you get to the point where they know you by name and they look forward to you coming back, and they're not going to ask the awkward questions anymore. They're going to ask, well, what are you guys doing? We ended up playing the song that Fox Amore and Pepper Coyote wrote for the convention that is celebrating Pittsburgh celebrating Anthrocon. It's Pittsburgh singing to the convention. They played a little bit of that, and we got told that there were hundreds of thousands of people that were trying to download that song at that point. They really liked it. You can build, as a press corps in your host city, if you're willing to deal with them and help them understand you, you can build up an amazing relationship that will help the convention and help the attendees, because the attendees become more comfortable with the fact they know the media is not out to get them. But you do always have to be careful. There are people that are out there that are trying to. Are they creating a howl?
Yes.
God,
There's an AWOO out there.
let's not do that again.
That's okay. This is a non-AWOO fine zone.
That's true.
But yeah, you can get your host media, the local media, if you build up that relationship, to play with you. We also did the Good Day Orlando spot. And
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I like that one.
That one went really well. And basically, when the guy interviewed me, he asked me, he said, so this is kind of a big party, isn't it? And I was like, it really is. What we're trying to do is just celebrating what would the world be like if animals could walk and talk like people. And he goes, we got a lot of furry people here, a lot of fuzzballs. And I'm like, yeah, we'll try not to get too many fuzzballs on you. And he was like, well, I have cats, so it's okay. So again, they became very friendly with us. So we do have a lot of positive experiences that we've started having with localized media. It's the ones who want the bigger story, quote unquote. They want something more than just this is what the convention is about. That's when we start getting kind of like the weird questions, awkward questions.
We had Reuters here a couple of years ago, actually, like a photojournalist. I don't know if it's a dirty trick or not, but so I was following this guy around. He's a photojournalist for Reuters based in Chicago, and he wanted to just document the convention. And normally you want to not do a whole lot of that. So photojournalists for those large agencies typically aren't out there to go write a story, but they're really sort of making a story with their photography. And I found out the guy's actually from the same part of Canada that I grew up in. And so it became one of the conversations of, okay, I'm gonna make you my friend because I don't want you to screw me as a friend. We gave him full reign in the hotel, and he put about 50 pictures actually into the wire. And I remember I was actually traveling for work at the time. I was over in, I was either over in Israel or over somewhere like in France or something like that, way over in Europe. And I saw a bunch of these photos up on their local news. I'm like, what the hell is this? because it's Reuters. They take pictures and they syndicate across the world basically. But they were really, really, really good pictures. And that was one of those only few moments where you're like, that was really cool that we did that. But God, that just could have gone so sideways.
Yeah, there was an NBC piece that I did a number of years ago where they actually were very insistent on me being in fursuit, but they wanted me to take the head off.
Oh, yeah.
And
they always want to do that.
Yeah, and I explained to them, there are some of us that are very old school in that we don't want to ruin the magic. And when I had to explain what the magic was, it was like when we put a costume on, we create a character, we don't want to break the facade of what that character is, especially if you've spent years developing it. Taking the head off and talking, headless kind of says, okay, I don't really care about the character's integrity anymore to a lot of people. And so I said, I'll tell you what, you can mic the head, I'll wear the head, and I will do the interview in complete costume.
That's awesome.
And I was like, even though the mouth doesn't move, I'll do that. But I said, or you can interview me outside of costume, but I won't do a half and half kind of thing.
You guys interviewed me, have you interviewed NBC at Intercon doing that, actually.
I did.
That was awesome.
I did. And I remember, this particular person, I can't remember her name, but she said, this is not normal. A lot of people don't consider this normal. And I said, you're right, it is not the social norm for a person to walk around in a mascot costume dressed as an animal, walking, talking, and waving to people, in the same way that it's not the social norm for a person to paint one half of their face gold and the other half black, go shirtless and screaming in 30-degree weather for football players. I said, that's not normal either. You have to look at, when you talk about fan, the word fan is short for fanatic. And people don't realize that. And when you are a fan, you are a kind of fanatic. It means that you are going to a different level than a lot of people that are in the mainstream to express yourself and to enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people body painting and going out in 30-degree weather if that's their deal and they want the Steelers or the Seahawks or the Bears or whoever to win.
UCF never had with the Bears, by the way.
Sorry. But if that's what they want to do, then they can do that. In the same way, if we want to wear a costume that we've commissioned for $3,000 plus and walk around pretending to be a walking, talking dog, so long as you're not hurting anybody, there's nothing wrong with that either. And I think once the press understands that, and we give them quotes like Mark Evanier said, anything that makes you happy, that does not cause others to become unhappy, is worthy of great respect. He was one of the founders of San Diego Comic-Con. And when he came to Furry Conventions and he saw that, he was like, I don't know if wearing a fursuit really makes the world a better place, but judging by the level of happiness I see at furry cons, there's a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. who should be wearing chipmunk suits right now. He got it. At the very end of the con, he got it. And he saw it really is just people expressing themselves and trying to make themselves happy. And nobody is doing anything to make anybody else unhappy. You're not trying to hurt them. You're not trying to foist something on them. We're doing it in our own way and in our own space. And when people understand that, maybe they can see in the rest of the world it's the same thing. Don't try to impose something on someone else to make yourself happy. Just be happy yourself.
So you brought up like that. I to this day I don't know what the rationale is. I mean, everyone has their own perspective on it. But the minute you're talking to most news media, they look at a fursuit and you go, I don't know, it's probably $3,000. Everybody immediately just goes from that's stupid to, wait a minute, really interesting. It's almost like they gain additional respect because this is a very expensive piece of art now. Maybe that's what it is, but it's bizarre. You can take people who just don't get this at all, and they're thinking, I go to the costume shop and I rent like a tiger suit for a couple $100, whatever. And you're like, no, this is a car. Somebody's wearing a car.
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh my, okay.
And when I remember with the Good Day Orlando piece, when I did the phone pre-interview, one of the things he said is, so tell me about the con. Tell me about the people there. And I'm like, okay, well, they're obviously the people in costume. They're the ones that are the most visible. We call them fursuiters. They're artists. They're people that will draw a character or an image to your specifications. You can tell them, I want a white bunny rabbit, but I want it to have pink hair, and it's got to have angel wings, and oh, by the way, it's got horns, and it actually carries around a giant mallet. And they will draw that for you. And he was like, really? And I was like, plus we have musicians, we have stand-up comedians, we have publishers, we have writers. And he's like, wait a minute, musicians? And I was like, yeah, furries are musicians too. And he was like, tell me about the musicians. And so I told him about Foxamore and Pepper Coyote and Rhubarb, who happened to all three be there. And he was like, this is so much more than I thought it was. And I was like, well, what did you think it was? And at that point, he was like, honestly, I thought it was just a bunch of freaks, that wanted to dress up in costume, kind of like sci-fi, only, not as uniform.
We're way nerdier than sci-fi.
Yeah, but I was like, there's a lot of different perspectives. And I was like, I think when you come here, you'll see just how wide a spectrum there is and how much talent there is. And he was like, I'm actually looking forward to this.
Yeah.
When the interview was done, he told us, one, it was the smoothest piece that he had done all year, that it was very easy for us to do. He was looking forward to coming back the following year. They actually didn't contact us, so something was going on. We're going to reach out to them and just make sure they're happy. But the guy who did the piece learned something about us. He was very respectful about the artwork and the costumes and how people perform. And we explained to him, a lot of the performers, you're not going to see their faces because they won't take the heads off while there are people around that they don't know. And he said, kind of like Disney. And I was like, some of these people might be from Disney. They might be from Universal, but some of them adhere to that code of conduct. That's what they believe in. And he was like, I respect you guys a lot more now than I did before, just because I've gotten to know you. And I think that is the one thing that people can take away. When a reporter says, I can respect you because now I've gotten to know you, I understand you. You actually did make a difference with the press. You let them know we're no different than any other people. We just do things differently. But we're out there to raise money for charity, have a little fun, blow off some steam, and at the end of the day, we're still bank tellers and students and corp executives and warehouse managers and military and all the other things that people happen to be here. And will be.
I'm pretty sure Will Wheaton's a furry. He'll deny it, but
he's one of those angry furries.
Yeah.
What's wrong with him?
What was up with that Joe Rogan thing the other day?
I don't know, actually. I don't know about the Joe Rogan thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Joe Rogan posted on Twitter, he was like, what's this furry thing?
The news guy?
No, I think he's like some podcaster or...
Oh, if it's a podcaster who's asking a question like that, he's looking to do a show.
Well, he's looking for people
He's
to reach out
looking-
and go, oh, it's this.
Yeah.
And if a bunch of people ignore him,
Yeah.
he's not going to bring it up.
No, people were sending him the CSI thing.
Of course.
Not a question, but one of my favorite things when a lot of these companies, like when it came to the iPhone X review, they started noticing that you could be like a talking cat and a couple of other things inside of it. And there were quite a few different cat podcasts, video casts, even news channels that their staff were thinking back to when they'd interacted with the furry community, and every once in a while you would hear on the air a quip from the newscaster or the talent or whoever was talking about it saying, well, I guess this feature shows that we all secretly want to be talking animals or secretly want to be furries. And I'm just thinking, yes.
I find that funny because that perception again of what furry is.
Yeah.
I know 3 or 4 furs who work for Apple, so I
know.
That's probably where it comes from.
Yes.
Talking about not letting the media into the convention, I forget where it was, what piece it was, but they had this like slow zoom in on they didn't allow us inside to see what was going on.
Yep.
So they can take that and flip that around too if they feel
No,
like.
they can. At least in the case of what we've done, and actually Anthrocon does it, we do it one way, and actually it's a similar tactic, different message. We focus an awful lot on the charity, and actually that was a big part of the message when we were talking to CNN, is all the charity work. And you belabor it to the point where they just don't want to talk about it anymore, but then you just keep talking about it.
With
That's how
Anthrocon,
you do it. And you do it with the city of Pittsburgh and all the awesome
That's-
stuff that you guys have.
That's what we do, is we focus on the economic impact
Yes.
to the city of Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
It's going to come out, I believe, first quarter next year, around March is when we'll get it. It is forecast that Anthrocon is responsible for a $7 million contribution in the course of 3 days into the Pittsburgh economy in the summer. That is unheard of, literally unheard of in Pittsburgh. There is no other convention that does that. The Visitor and Convention Bureau has said Anthrocon is the single most important out-of-town convention that comes in to the city for the entire year. It just used to be the summertime.
Wow.
Now it is the most important out-of-town convention all year round. It is the one now that they do not want to lose.
And of course, Chicago and Orlando.
It's a drop in the
much
bucket.
higher standards.
Yes, well, it's a drop in the bucket
Yeah.
because we are big cities and we're
Higher
touristy cities.
I've said this before. If it's 10 million people, Chicago Metro, we could have 20 furcons going on and no one would care.
But yeah, no,
Well, see, and
we,
I noticed that.
yeah.
Because when you're in Pittsburgh, it's like everybody's honking at you, everybody's waving, everybody's cool, you know, hey.
Yeah.
They're
it's
used
like,
to us by now.
Nah, nobody cares.
no big
I don't
deal.
hate you. They're just like, whatever.
Actually, I was walking with Albaz to the, if anybody knows Albaz the lion, he's the poker lion. I was walking with him when I went to the convention center earlier to drop some stuff off. There were a couple people honking and waving.
And
at
there
him.
was a few.
There's a few.
That's true.
Because I personally think a big blue lion walking down the thing wearing a Chicago Cubs t-shirt is probably going to get a little bit of attention
Yeah.
in this town. But
pretty
yeah,
cool, too.
yeah, I mean, the media and the press are always looking for what I guess we would call color. They're looking for a story that's going to catch people's attention and hold it for more than 15 seconds.
Yeah.
On television, it's going to be fursuits,
Yep.
hands down, because they're colorful, they're interesting, they're different. You don't see them all the time.
They literally jump right out at you. Your eye
Yeah.
is going to immediately focus on it.
When it comes to the written word or the published word, they have to look for something shocking to hold your attention if it's not just straight news.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of them look for. And they're looking for people with words they can twist, words they can kind of meld together to make the statement that they want them to make. And Kage, actually, Okokage from Intercon had a story where there was a person in Pittsburgh who was talking to someone on the street, not in the convention space, not a thing we could do about it. And they were talking about costuming, and they said, so what do you think about fursuiting? And she was telling him, oh, I really like it, it lets me come out of my shell, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but it's summertime around here, you know. And she goes, and she gave them the soundbite they wanted. Yeah, it's really hot. That was the soundbite they wanted. This particular interview, they spliced things together where everybody thought it was going to be innocuous. And they were like, so, what do you think about fursuiting? Does it turn you on at all? And the response was, yeah, it's really hot. That person has never been back, to our knowledge, to any furry convention. It scared her away because of all the attention that she got. She has never come back to Anthrocon, and to my knowledge, not to any other furry con. It ruined her experience. That's what a lot of us are trying to protect a lot of other people from. It's, you know, we don't want our attendees going through that.
One of the things they teach you in press and analyst training, a lot of cases, is, and you watch it on television, and you'll never be able to unwatch it now that you know it's a thing. You need to be able to creatively answer the question with the question they asked you at the same time. Is it hot outside? Gosh, yeah, the weather's crazy around here. It's so warm. String your words together quickly. You almost slur them because then you can't splice it. You have to put the question back in it because you can't pull it apart. It is an art. It is super hard, but the pros do it brilliantly.
Yeah, if you are not answering the question with their words,
Yeah.
if you're shortening the answer, you're giving them a lot of latitude. If they are a disrespectful or an illegitimate journalist, there are legitimate journalists who are out there just to do the story, and I have to give them their props. Yeah, they're doing a job. They're trying to report what's going on in their hometown, and they're trying to do a good job at that. But there are the ones that are looking to sell something to AP. And to
I'm doing a lot of promotion now for my book, and it's interesting the kind of, some people interviewing me, very open-minded, very curious. I did an interview with the New York Post, and the guy was, again, very, very curious, asked a lot of good questions. But when it wound up in the paper, it's inside the weird world of furries where grown adults get their kicks dressing up as beasts. And there's also some, the facts are essentially okay, but when he says like, Strike insisted that only a small number of his comrades engage in sexual acts while dressed in their outfits, insisted sounds an awful like desperately denied.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and the online version was headlined, Inside the Furry Fetish. So,
I was actually going to mention that about headlines.
Alliteration too. That'll fly real well.
A lot of people don't understand that headlines are sometimes written by different people than write the story.
Yep.
And
The editors.
there was something that I submitted to the Daily Cougar, which was the University of Houston newspaper. Paul McCartney came into the state for a concert. It was a big, big deal because he hadn't toured in like 10 years. And Linda, his then wife, was very ill and passed away a bit after that. when I wrote the article, I went out into the parking lot and I interviewed 10, 15 people, where they came from, what they did, how big this was to them, families that came together because they all loved McCartney's music, they loved the Beatles, they loved Wings, they liked this and that. Wrote this article, and it was actually almost a full-page article because, like I said, it was a huge deal. And when I got to school, the day that ran in the paper, I had 24 people walking up to me at the journalism building, screaming at me about how dare I write an article like that. And I was like, what happened? And my friend Ed said, you need to look at the headline.
No.
The article was written almost exactly as I had written it, and it was very respectful. The headline was, McCartney inspires insipid adoration.
What?
And it set the tone that every single person that was there was an idiot, because that's what the word insipid means. It means that you are mindless. And people that had waited years and years for a concert come from halfway across the country to watch him perform, had idolized him and loved his music because they are musicians themselves and wanted to see someone who had performed at the National Archives with the Stradivarius Quartet of America. They were calling these people insipid. That is how you have to be careful, because even though I wrote the article myself, someone else changed the headline, and all of a sudden, everybody in there looked like an idiot.
Did you go to the headline?
I went to the editor and I said, how could you have put something like the word insipid in that title? And he said, well, it was another student who was doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, you're the editor. You're supposed to be, you don't allow people to insult people like this. Became a big deal. But again, I only tell that story to let people know there's always somebody out there who's just trying to do something, whether it's get a good grade, find out how to make something a little bit more salacious or a little bit more, I gotcha, zap, whatever. You can take the most innocuous article and put a headline on it that's got a slant to it, and it completely changes how the article sounds.
So the worst thing I could possibly say to that, I mean, we're talking about it right now. I mean, that's legitimately the point that a lot of these folks are doing. The fact that you're talking about the article is exactly why they do this kind of stuff. It's worse now, I would argue, than it's ever been, at least as long as I've been doing this, because media is so fragmented right now. It is so hard to stand out. I think that's why you're seeing the feature things start to creep up as far as a trend. Because everyone's reading 140 and 280 characters, if you can make something salacious that actually is something you can bite into, you are now standing up from the rest of the crowd purely because of that. You're going to see it flip back and forth again. But I think it's probably more dangerous right now than ever to have any media involved with this stuff, because you can't take something like the furry fandom and describe it in 140 characters. But a ton of people are going to try.
There's you're right.
Yeah, there's a radio station in Orlando that plays alternative rock, and so they have these promos. They're very interesting. They normally relate the radio station into hearing new music on that radio station to some other thing, and they've got one that says, it's kind of like that time where you caught your roommate wearing a furry outfit, and then they cut to the sound of it. Oh my God, that's my fetish too. And it's just like,
Really?
yeah.
Well, at least they're sharing.
Was that 104.1?
1033.
1033.
Yeah,
HD3.
there's a chapter in the book about news coverage. I read the news today, oy vey. So I have a bunch of war stories about that.
There's the only other story I was going to relate, because this happened this summer, and I'm not trying to take up all of Cody's time or anything.
No, I've had on here a minute.
Yeah, I was asked to do 5 radio stations back to back, and if you've ever been to a radio station system, if they're all like Clear Channel stations, they're all in a row. So it's like there are lots and lots of glass cubes, and you see the logo on here, and then you walk next door, and there's a logo here, and you see the broadcast booth. It's not in all in different buildings per station now. It's all stations in one building per network. The last one I had to do, we had to walk. Ash, the programmer, and I had to walk to about a mile away. And we got there, and it was a rock station. It was like almost shock jock type stuff. And so we're sitting at the table, and there are microphones all the way around with the headphones and the little buttons to let you stop and start. And the radio jocks were really focused on the sexuality thing. Like we're talking about the parade, and we're talking about the weather, and we've got new cruises where you can be in fursuit and go up and down the Allegheny River, and you can do this and that and whatnot. And we've got kids programming and whatnot. And they're like, okay, so, just be honest with me. And I'm like, okay. He goes, a lot of people talk about the sexual side of things. And, you go online and you Google this stuff and there's sexual stuff. And I was like, well, our attendees are all humans, and human beings have sex. You are proof of that. So if you want me to say that we don't have sex, that's a liar. That I'm making you into a liar. But that's not the focus of the convention. And he goes, oh, come on. When people go to conventions, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, you guys have like DJ conventions and radio conventions around the country. Do you guys like get it on? Do you guys, are you guys really the monsters you say you are? Oh, yeah, you never know, blah, 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 blah. And, yeah, we do this and that. And I was like, do your wives know? And they were like, what? I was like, I'd love to know what your wife's reaction was to when you said, you were monstering it up, in another town at a convention in a hotel. And it's like, well, we want to thank our friends from Anthrocon. They cut the conversation right there. And actually one of the DJs goes, you guys should never do that. And I was like, do what? I was just asking you questions like you were asking me. And he was like, don't try to make us look bad. I was like, you did that yourself. Yeah, I was like, you guys did that yourself. Don't try to make us look into something that we're not. There's a whole umbrella of people that are there. You were making fun of the fact that I wear a business suit. I like to wear business suits. I like wearing a tie. That's my thing. I like to dress up. I'm not trying to put the best face on the convention. I'm putting the best face on me. That's what I want to look like.
Kanye had a great response to that line of questioning. He said, you seem awfully interested in sex for some reason.
Yeah. Yep. That is a beautiful line.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the things. When we do have people that are shock jocks that want to focus on a lot of that stuff.
I need that upstairs.
Yeah. I'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, right. Thank you
Hey,
guys.
thank you.
Apologies.
Thank you.
He is a busy con chair working on it.
Tired.
And it is almost time to, it is actually time to wrap it up. But yeah, the point with the media is there are good media people and bad media people, and we don't know who they are until we talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that are attendees that have not dealt with the convention point of view don't really know what the conventions want to focus on. Because every convention has things they are proud of and that they want to feature and they want to talk about. The charity work, or having Wish Kids come and show up at a convention, or the fact that we're raising $6-7 million as a fandom into a local economy in 3 days. Every convention has their talking points. If you're trying to impose your personal belief system on a convention's talking points, you're kind of superseding what they are trying to do as an organization. And we all are private organizations. That's how we manage to keep the peace and how we manage to keep everybody safe. We have our own rules that are not just open society rules. So when dealing with the media, if you see somebody who looks like media and they don't have somebody with them that has the right badges, see if you can get someone to go in that direction, or tell them, hey, let me get someone who can answer those questions for you. Because I personally cannot speak for any conventions I am not told to speak for. All three of the ones that I am authorized to speak for have very different answers for different things that they want said. Because it's what their mission, it involves their mission statements. And I would suggest, anybody who tries to say one convention speaks for the fandom is really, really doing a disservice to all the conventions out there that are trying to do different things for different people. That's the final point that I would make, is every convention has a point of view. Please respect them. Let each convention shine in its own way. Let the furry fandom be not a single star, but let it be a constellation of bright stars and smaller stars that are starting to become brighter. Let that constellation be beautiful. Let it be as different and varied in the stars as it can be. Let it make us stronger as a group, because we are different and because we all have different points of view. That's what's going to keep the furry fandom growing and keep us a really interesting and great place to be. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or anything, pop on up. I'm going to get ready to just run out and get some more water and stuff, because I'm